Welcome to Tone Talks. 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 Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Tone Talks in the building. We're gonna have a great show today. We have a special guest. I'm gonna introduce you in a second. Y'all know this is a three-part special. I was supposed to have Byron Allen on, but as I said on Twitter, essentially what's happening is that there's a Supreme Court case going on, and it's a very delicate situation, and we just got to make sure that everything's on the right. So I have a wonderful guest instead, and I met this brother. Let me say this. I was part of the Los Angeles Urban League Young Professionals, and I met this brother because he was a newly elected president. I was speaking for the Los Angeles Urban League maybe a year and a half ago. I met this brother, and he allowed me to present to his young professionals about black wealth. This president has done something monumental, and I want to talk about him today to both congratulate him and to speak about the realities of the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and the Comcast Supreme Court case that all of us need to be paying attention to. President Lawson, you want to say hello to the audience?
Good afternoon. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being on the show, and I remember the days that presentation that you made. It was wonderful, and I appreciate you having me on.
Man, we about to get into it today. We about to get into it today. The title of the show is Los Angeles Urban League speaks on Comcast Supreme Court case that attacks civil rights. We're going to talk about the Civil Rights Act of 1866. For my audience, that this is your third week, you're kind of familiar, but we're going to overview it. We got to make sure everybody's on page. We're going to talk about the new letter that just came out on deadline from President Lawson in the LA Urban League. Powerful, monumental, historic. I'm going to give it to him. Let me stop and just say this. Brother, I commend you for doing what needed to be done, even though I know it's within your job title, being a civil rights organization, but it's time for us as black folks to own something. Now, I'm going to go through a couple questions, and these aren't questions for you to answer yet, because I'm going to come back around to them. I'm just setting up the show. I'm talking to you, President, but let me go through these 5 questions that we're going to talk about, and then we'll come right back out to the top. Number 1, what is the Los Angeles Urban League's position on the Comcast case that attacks the Civil Rights Act of 1866? Number 2, why is a boycott a possible call to action against Comcast by the LA Urban League? Number 3, why has the National Urban League org been silent? Is there a conflict? Are they gonna, you can let us know. Number 4, that's number 3. Number 4, what is the importance of black ownership and the Civil Rights Act of 1866 as a key to that ownership? We know, my audience, we talk about it all the time. White folks have 90% of the wealth. We have 3%, which means they have just about $100 trillion in household wealth, and we have $3 trillion. Much of that is calcified even amongst black folks. Inside of the top 10% of black families, the bottom 90% of black America is living on not enough. Not enough at all. $700 billion. Understand that white America, again, is living on $100 trillion. Even outside of the top 10, they still living on $25 trillion. The access key to that is laws like the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And we're going to get into how we make that work. Number 5. What is the LA Urban League's position on reparations for the descendants of American slavery? We're going to talk about it, ADOS. So let's just start off. What is the LA Urban League's position on the Comcast case involving the Civil Rights Act of 1866?
Thank you very much for this. This is very simple. The Los Angeles Urban League and the Urban League's position in general, and I want to state that this is not just the Los Angeles Urban League, but the Urban League as a whole, is squarely on the side of maintaining the current interpretation of the Civil Rights Act of 1866, specifically Section 1981, which basically says that that no one could deny or refuse to enter into a contract with an African American simply because he was African American.
Before you, just to be clear, let me read the actual Civil Rights Act into the record so everybody's clear. be it enacted by the Senate and House Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, that all persons born in the U.S. and not subject to any foreign power, excluding Indians not taxed, are hereby declared to be citizens of the U.S. and such citizens of every race and color, without regard to any previous condition of slavery or involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall have the same right in every state and territory in the U.S. to make and enforce contracts, to sue, be parties, and give evidence to inherit, purchase, lease, sell, hold, and convey real and personal property, and to full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the securities of person and property. So I just wanted to read that into the record, and I'll let you continue. My apologies.
Absolutely. I appreciate you doing that, because the language is clear. The language is very clear that you cannot refuse to enter into a contract with another American citizen simply because of their race or background or private or previous situation. The fact is that this was enacted, quite frankly, it as an alternative. Well, some people call it an alternative to reparations, but
in conjunction with, it was supposed to work hand in hand.
In conjunction with, absolutely, in conjunction with reparations. And so, and the purpose of it was clear, to make amends or to change the playing field that existed prior to the Civil War. It's plain and simple. Prior to the Civil War, you as a white man, you did not have to do anything. You could not be compelled.
Come on.
To enter into an agreement with a black man. Period.
And I think what we got to realize is this isn't just the oldest civil rights. This is the first Civil Rights Act. This is the Civil Rights Act that roots the idea that everybody should have a shot. This is the beginning of an idea of an America that not just the rich are actually in a position where nobody else has a chance. This gives birth to the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment is the first time we see equality in the Constitution. It gives birth to the birthright citizenship eventually. This law is the law that establishes some sense of fairness in an unfair America. Now, we also got to remember, as I've said before, there were basically the way it's written, it sounds like it's for everybody today, and it is. But at that time, it was written for the descendants of American slavery. Because what you're looking at is the timing. December of 65, we're made free. By December of 66, this law is on the books. The fundamental reality is that even if we get reparations, I've said this to you guys before, if this law is so hard that we high a bar that we can't use it, reparations largely might just go right back to white folk. We got to have the discussion, because if you listen to what I said, the law says it basically establishes all the fairness rules to own land, do contracts, go to court if your contract gets messed up. If you don't have none of those things, you can't move your money around. What you think about this before we move to question 2?
I don't think I can describe it any better than you have. You have laid it out. It is the groundwork. It is the baseline that every citizen should be entitled to. End of story, without question. But it had to be memorialized in a statute, and you properly stated and set the table that this predated the 14th Amendment.
It predated equality, because I think that we like to think of an America that slavery didn't happen in. In an America where those white men that were enacting slavery weren't in it. The idea of freedom and equality, it kind of comes out of the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and expands from there. So now what we have is an issue where, again, the motivating factor standard versus the but-for standard. The standard that basically you got to prove there is some kind of semblance of racism versus a racial epithet. Somebody called you the N-word. A bar too high because you might need an email in a secret server that you can't reach versus being able just to show they don't do no business with black folk. This is the time we got to have the discussion. And I want to start off, and I'm going to read this letter, and I just want to I'm going to read your letter into the discussion because it was so powerful. I commend you again for stepping out and doing this letter. You addressed it to Brian Roberts, the chairman and CEO, David of Comcast, David Cohen, the senior executive vice president of Comcast. And you said, "Dear Mr. Roberts and Mr. Cohen, we are appalled by your decision to challenge and destroy the federal civil rights statute of 1866 in the Supreme Court, and do so in partnership with Trump administration's Department of Justice. It is clear from your actions that you have conceded that race was a significant, if not the only factor in your refusal to negotiate a contract in good faith." Brother, you came in with it. "And that your only pathway to success is to eviscerate a 153-year-old civil rights statute, set back civil rights for millions of Americans, and embolden the racist elements throughout our country, which grow stronger on a daily basis. If this is not your goal, you should immediately and without condition withdraw your appeal to the Supreme Court." Before I continue, what made you do this letter and be so strong worded?
The fact is that we've seen this before. If you look at Title VII, the statute that was designed to eliminate employment discrimination, when it was first passed, you saw a flurry of class action cases that were exposing employers and their discriminatory practices. And then, without really paying attention, without a lot of us paying attention, the court said, well, the defendants came up and said, well, listen, regardless of whether there's a pattern in practice of discrimination with respect to employment, some of these folks in this class action we wouldn't employ for reasons that have nothing to do with race. So the class action really can't go forward unless we can prove that the entire class doesn't have any blemish that would eliminate them from the pool. And basically that position destroyed the class action model with respect to employment discrimination. And what came up in its place was a practice from the defendant's standpoint, where in any sort of employment discrimination claim, their sole goal was to find one reason that was not based on race for why they wouldn't hire this person.
Come on.
Even if this blemish was something that a white employee had and they decided to waive it, they said, this is the condition for which we can terminate somebody, for which we can decide not to hire somebody. And the fact that we hire some white folks that have this blemish is irrelevant. This person has this blemish. This person has, there was a typo on his application, or there was, he said he graduated in 1969. Turns out he graduated in 1970. So, he lied on his application. So instead of actually trying to prove that they were not discriminating on the basis of race, they simply went after the plaintiffs and tried to find some reason that was not based on race to defeat their claim.
Come on, man.
And it is that type of attack on this statute that this entails. And we didn't stand up and fight that the way we should have at that time. And now we see them trying to use that tactic again with respect to Section 1981. And if you don't know the history of Title VII, you might think, oh, this is, just a tweak on the standards that should be applied, and not realize that this will essentially eviscerate the ability to use this statute in the future, because all the defendants will do is look for some reason
And think about this.
They don't even have to deny that there is a racial factor.
And I think one of the things that we also have in this America versus even the America of the 60s is the rise of white women inside of the minority status. So all you got to do is point to the fact that you do have women in some capacity, even though they might be your wife or whatever. Let's talk about it. See, like, I think one of the things that we have to understand is that we are locked out trying to get inside as black folk. So if we locked out trying to get inside, we can't let them conserve and lock up the doors because we're not inside. And that's what this law, this change does. It locks the doors as if we already got our reparations, as if we already been made whole, as if we already own 50 channels. But we don't. Let me finish reading this letter, brother, because when I read this letter, I almost fell out my chair. If your goal, this is the letter written by President Lawson, released on deadline, covered by Yahoo. If you're about the Comcast lawsuit, Civil Rights Act of 1866, basically threatening a boycott if you're going to continue down this path. If your goal is to dismantle the civil rights gains that have been secured with the lives, blood, sweat, and tears of countless generations through the 400 years that have passed since the commencement of the legal enslavement of Africans in this country, you should be clear about your intentions and resign as officers of your corporation. Again, this is addressed to Brian Roberts and to David Cohen of Comcast. Mr. Roberts, you, along with almost 200 members of the Business Roundtable, signed an open letter calling for corporations to foster diversity and inclusion and respect the people in our communities. Yet you now want to destroy a federal civil rights statute in the U.S. Supreme Court with the help of Donald Trump's DOJ, Department of Justice. As leaders of major American publicly traded corporations providing critical news information and broadband connectivity to millions of people, you should be working to enhance the civil rights of your subscribers, investors, viewers, advertisers, not diminish them. You should not challenge our civil rights in the U.S. Supreme Court and foster institutionalized racism with the help of Donald Trump. If you choose, look, this is the call to action. This is the brother coming. If you choose to continue your attempt to eviscerate this civil rights law, we will have no choice but to call for a boycott of everything Comcast, effective immediately. We will bring this matter to the attention of 1, your regulators, including without limitation the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, and the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. 2, your investors, many of whom demand that the public companies in which they invest adhere to basic tenets of civil rights values. And number 3, your NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, USA, Bravo, E! viewers, millions of whom look to your network journalistic and editorial practices as paragons of American ethics and morals. Number 4, your advertisers, many of which have withdrawn their advertising dollars from other media platforms that have shown hostility or insensitivity to the civil rights of African Americans and other minorities. And number 5, your subscribers, millions of whom are African American or other ethnic minorities subject to the protection of civil rights. And last but not least, Mr. Cohen is a board member of the National Urban League, one of America's long-standing civil rights organizations. What you do now will tell us whether you are a true supporter of the cause or just an enemy working from the inside, brother. I'm gonna drop that right there. That right there is how you do it. If you're gonna say it, you say it with your chest. And I just wanted to say, like, you know, we a month out from the actual hearing. Is there a particular thing that put you over the edge that was done, or is it just built up to the point where you felt like you needed to say this?
It's all wrapped up in what I was saying earlier. We were asleep when Title VII got eviscerated. Once I realized what was happening and how it was happening, and the fact that it was that because of the relationship between Comcast and the Urban League, I knew we had to do something, number one. Number two, it was not getting the attention that it needed.
Come on. I believe that this is bigger than media. That's how big this is. They can't get if you work for MSNBC, we already see the conflict because Comcast owns MSNBC. Everything Trump has done, MSNBC has jumped on, except for this. Now, I put it like this. Let me put it real simple. I'm gonna put it in 400 years since slavery. Angela arrived on the East Coast. This week or last week was 400 years. We got one of the wealthiest black men in the history of the nation, if you look at his assets, bringing a lawsuit regarding the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And ain't no media covered it. Ain't nobody dealt with it for $20 billion. See, I don't understand. Now, I Washington Post, New York Times, I think a piece is coming out in the Philadelphia Inquirer finally. But this is what civil rights organizations have to do to apply the pressure that we need to apply to make sure that black issues, our issues, get told. Now, I ask you this, moving to question number 2, why is a boycott a possible call to action against Comcast by the LA Urban League?
The boycott, this country was built on dollars. And when you try to move the needle with respect to corporations in America, the most effective weapon that we had in the context of civil rights over the years is taking action that impacts the financial health of the organization. That's when you get their attention. I mean, we're really just trying to get their attention. We're not trying to hurt Comcast. We're not trying to cause their stock to fall. But without some action such as this, we won't get their attention.
So when I look at it in the context of the Montgomery bus boycott, one of the most famous. They got off the buses, I believe, for a year. Wasn't it like a year? They felt that.
Right.
Now we're dealing with international companies, so we got to apply the pressure a little differently. But let me say this. Let me go back and explain this to the folks listening. Black folks could have had cable companies themselves, but we were locked out. We had the rights to do our own cable lines. We had the rights to do our own ownership, but the banks wouldn't loan to us. So we sold them rights to Comcast and companies like them, not just Comcast. And then the banks loaned to them. Fundamentally, what you see now is that, okay, you got the cable lines, but can we own the channel? Can we at least own our own vision of ourselves? Not a channel that you basically kind of prop up and tell us what to put on there. The kind of channel where we talk about reparations. We talk about reparations. The kind of channel where we talk about the LA Urban League and what the LA Urban League needs to do to build itself up in LA. But see, what you realize is that when we get that kind of channel, all of a sudden, well, I don't like how your channel is formatted. I don't like that your shows are 30 minutes instead of an hour. I don't like anything to get out of distributing that channel. And I guess what the reason why I bring that up in this context is because we got to start realizing while we might not have a whole lot of economic power, we got some economic power. And what we also got to realize is our economic power as black folks that built America, that come from slavery, it goes beyond just the dollars in our pocket. It goes into the history in our bones. Because the reality is this country owes us a great debt, and that debt has a social cost tied to it. See, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 was built and designed for the descendant of slavery. I know the language is broad, but wasn't nobody else here. It was Indians, white folks, and descendants of slavery. That was what was in America. So when they're talking about when they're talking about slavery in there, they're saying that you got to treat this black man with the same rights to allow him to be American, to access capitalism, the free markets. And I guess now I have to come to you with a little bit of a harder question. I know you said that the National stands with you, but I haven't really read anything from the National. And I guess I'm just saying it feels like you're leading the charge and they're coming with you. What is the state of that so I can get clear?
Let me just make sure that your listeners understand how the Urban League is structured. We are an affiliate organization. We have a National Urban League that is kind of an umbrella organization, and then we have 90 plus affiliates over 35 states that are under the umbrella but not under the control of the National Urban League. Having said that, in addition, there is a tradition within the Urban League of acting, taking action behind closed doors, being effective, and that is the primary focus of the activity that you find, and the successful activity that you find with the Urban League generally. This was Whitney Young's. It was a model that he promoted, and the model that is at the core of how the Urban League operates. So my letter, to be candid, is an aberration. It is, and the only reason I went this direction was because we are in a situation where we needed to act quickly. Because given the makeup of the Supreme Court, given the number of conservative justices that have been appointed by Republicans who are hostile to the civil rights of minorities and women, there is more than a significant chance that this cert petition could go in a direction that would be devastating. For the use of this Civil Rights Act. Absolutely.
And let's just say the reality is not just civil rights, because there's a young lady suing PNC Bank right now, not involved with Byron's case. She's using the Civil Rights Act of 1866 in labor law. I keep telling y'all, Byron's case is not in the Supreme Court. The whole case, the meat and potatoes. They are talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and deciding whether it's going to be the but-for or the motivating factor. And what that matters for is a couple of reasons. Because if it's a lower burden, there's a higher likelihood that you'll be able to win, or at least get further along in the stages. You know what that means for black folks who don't have money for attorneys? That you could do contingency cases. But they raised that standard. I don't know how many lawyers, black or not, will take cases for free. That means that, or on contingency, I'm sorry. That means that you might have to pay a retainer. And now when companies know that lawyers aren't going to be bringing cases, companies start doing more and more dastardly things. This is a slippery slope we on. This is the first Civil Rights Act. And I only ask you one other question, and I have to ask it because it's important. What is the conflict if Comcast is on the board and you have to stand up against them in civil rights? Does it create a conflict in your mind, and what do you think?
We have the Los Angeles Urban League has representatives from Comcast on our board. We have representatives of Charter on our board. As board members, they are expected to make financial contributions to the organization and support the things that we are doing to advance civil rights and economic empowerment of communities. That's why they're there. They're volunteers to be there. If they're doing something that is contrary to what the mission of the Urban League is, that does not create a conflict, because that doesn't prevent me from doing what I need to do.
Come on. And you did it with that letter. Let me say that.
I tell them, here's what we need to do. And if you want to withdraw your donations to the Urban League because we're taking this action, so be it.
Come on, man.
We cannot be bought.
Man,
look.
And
that just solidifies my understanding of where you are and what your positions are. Now, the fact of the matter is that the corporate representatives that are on my board, when we take a position that is contrary to positions that they want to take with respect to any particular matter, take net neutrality, for example. California passed law with respect to net neutrality, and we were asked if we would support it. I wholeheartedly said yes. I notified my board members that this is a position we were going to take. Asked them if they had any comments on it. The members of our board that were in the Comcast and AT&T family who didn't want net neutrality said, "I will be neutral. I will not vote on this," which said to me, I can't, in my role as an employee of this company, be on record as voting for something that is contrary to what my management says they want to do. But I'm not going to prevent you from doing it.
Man, you got principles. You got principles.
You got principles. That's exactly right.
And let me say this: the LA Urban League, like I said, I was part of the young professionals, and I commend you, brother, for writing this letter. This is a monumental letter for Black folks, because in so many ways this goes up in a month, and if it does go the wrong way, what you want to be able to do is look in the mirror and say, "I did my part to stand against it." Now, I asked you this last two set of questions, and we can come in together, and then I'll let you go. Number 4. What is the importance of Black ownership in the Civil Rights Act of 1866 as a key to that ownership? We have literally little to no wealth. Much of our wealth is in the hands of boomers. I believe one of the reasons that civil rights orgs, churches, many other things need like corporate sponsorship is because the Black race don't have wealth. So we don't have like private donors that just drop money like all that often. So then we turn to corporations. Now, I ask you, I guess, this act, isn't this a key to ownership?
There's no question. This is the key to ownership. If you can be denied access to capital, if you could be denied access to credit, if you could be denied the right to buy a house in a particular neighborhood, if you can be denied the right to buy a business, then you can never be free. Ever.
Come on.
It is a key.
It's like having a hole at the bottom of your pocket. You ever put change in your pocket and got a hole at the bottom? It hit your shoe. It just go right to your shoe.
Right to your shoe. In essence, this is the equivalent of the sharecropping situation.
Come on. You know what's the trip about your example? When you look at it, a lot of people don't understand when they said 40 acres and a mule. Let me say it again: 40 acres and a mule. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 is the mule. See, what I mean is the reason why they added the mule is so that you couldn't be cheated and plundered on what you need to transfer that money into something tangible in labor. So a Black man with a mule can go out and doesn't have to rent the mule from some white landowner. See, I think the Civil Rights Act of 1866 is what you need to take multi-trillion-dollar reparations and make it ownership. It's what you need to make sure that companies have to show you the books. How many Black folks, ADOS folks, own channels? I mean, 100%. So I asked you the last question and I'll let you go, brother, and you can answer it how you see fit. Myself, along with Yvette Carnell, Breaking Brown, has led to a transformational discussion around reparations over the last 6 months to 9 months, particularly as the presidential candidates announced. I asked you, the question is, what is, I guess, the LA Urban League's position on reparations for descendants of American slavery?
Again, this is my personal position.
Okay.
This is not something that has been discussed, debated, argued about on a level that doesn't become a plank within the Urban League system. But the fact of the matter is, we're the only people who have been treated this badly and have not been awarded reparations.
Come on.
There's no question about it. We are where we are in large part because our wealth was stolen, and it was not returned to us in any way, shape, or form. It is difficult, if not impossible, to argue if reparations are not, that we are not entitled to reparations. The argument doesn't work. There is no argument that makes sense.
Yeah, because I work with Darity. Sandy Darity is a leading economist in this space. What you find is that the only thing that closes the racial wealth gap is reparations. Nothing else closes it. Because when you understand the data, and that's one of the things about my project, explaining to not only black folks but all of America what wealth is really doing, what you find is so if white people were 100%, each percent of white people is worth $1 trillion. They have $100 trillion. We are only worth $3 trillion, even though we're 14% of the population and built the country. The problem with class-based policy is it takes it as though we are even, though that gap don't exist. And you start giving gifts that end up going to the top half of the people who have $100 trillion. Whether it be a housing plan or student loans, they work really good after you give us reparations. And again, lastly, this is a debt that's owed to our families. No one says this when it comes to any group, whether it be Japanese internment, whether it be Jews with the Holocaust, whether it be Native Americans. No one says, well, why are you asking for reparations? Your family died already. That don't even make no sense. You didn't pay them. I think we got to have that discussion, and I appreciate you giving us what you gave us. Any last thing you want to say to the callers? I mean, to the audience, I should say.
The only thing I have to say is I appreciate the support that I've gotten from this letter. The fact is that this is an aberration in terms of the way the Urban League acts, but the fact is that this wasn't well known, and we didn't have much time. And so we needed to take action. I felt the need to take action to bring attention to this and to hopefully impress upon the leadership of Comcast the devastating impact that this will have if they go through with this petition. To have the Supreme Court hear their arguments and have the Department of Justice under Donald Trump try to eviscerate this statute. So I felt the need to take action immediately. I am just amazed at the response that I've been getting from the community, and I appreciate that. And I want, but this is just the beginning, and this is not about me. This is about us. This is about what we need to do in order to take back the power that we have, that we know we have, and not let it be whittled away. There's more to be done. Hopefully, Comcast will withdraw their petition. If they don't, this will be fought in court. And by the way, the National Urban League has commissioned the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights to file an amicus brief in this case. So I do not want it to be said that National is not doing anything. That is not the case. So we are fighting this on two fronts, and we will continue to fight. This is what our parents did. This is what our grandparents did. This is what our great-grandparents did. It is up to us to continue the fight, and it is a fight that happens every single day. You get up every morning, you put your armor on, and you go out into the world, and you fight the fight that is before you. This is the fight that was before me. I am just heartened by the responses that we have received, but there is much work to do. This is not about accolades. This is not about pats on the back. We haven't done anything yet but bring attention to this. Now we have to act. Hopefully Comcast will see the light, and we won't have to take the actions that have been proposed in the letter, but we need to be prepared to do so.
Man, that's powerful. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you, man.
Man, you talk about a powerful call. Talk about a powerful call. The thing about this moment is that for black folks, I think for a lot of us, we've never seen nothing like this. This kind of political atmosphere where we gotta be aware. Again, this is Dash Radio, Dash Talk X. I'm sorry, I mean Dash Radio, Voice of Reason. I didn't get a chance. If you can't get to this, go to the Voice of Reason radio station on Dash Radio. You know that my video buffering again. We having a discussion in my video buffering, but we ain't gonna let that stop us. We gonna have this talk. Oh man. In so many ways, what I think starts to happen is that we as black folks look around and ask questions and don't get no answers. What we got today is some answers. We got some real discussion about what goes on behind the scenes, how we get there. How did black folks get shut out? And I think for a lot of us, that's too hard and too high a road to go down. Man, this day, this moment, I think for me is such a powerful one, because I look at this thing and I look at the black folks that are out here doing the work, and I say to myself, you know, this letter that he wrote, you need to read it. It's on Deadline. Yvette Carnell, you there?
I'm here.
I'm connecting this YouTube back. You know, they done dropped me off again. When I'm talking that real, they drop me off, Vet. I'm gonna be back. I'm gonna be back live in a second. Don't trip. Oh man. We back live. You can go back on YouTube. So look, I want to say this, Yvette. Comcast. First, let me just let you get off. This is Yvette Carnell of Breaking Brown. What did you think about what that man just said to us?
Well, I first of all thought it was phenomenal. I thought his articulation of what's happening and the importance of that first civil rights law and what it means for us in terms of us accessing Americanness. And what I mean by accessing Americanness is American rights and American wealth. So that was the first thing. But one of the things that was so profound, he said, when he talked about, I think it was Title VII, he said, we were asleep. And I think what ADOS represents is the awakening of the American descendants of slavery. We were asleep. We let this stuff go. We let it ride. We didn't have leaders who did enough, who paid enough attention, who wanted. And I think we're entering a new phase where we understand who we have to be. And he understood that very clearly. And I want to just thank him for coming onto your show. It was a great show. I appreciated his articulation of that. But let me just say one other thing that's kind of stood out to me. When he talks about but for, if I can find or make up one other thing that everybody else can get away with, but I'm gonna fire you because of it. I'm gonna hold you to it. What that really says is, this is what I try to tell people all the time, even white people who think they're well-meaning people. Racism is a double standard. It ain't about you running around calling nobody the N-word. If when Tamika comes into work, if you look at Tamika and you say Tamika, if she's late for work, if you say Tamika was probably out partying and she's irresponsible because she's black. But when Becky comes into work and she's late, you say, well, she was probably up with her kids, or she probably had a car problem. You're a racist. And see, we have been allowing people to act on this and make up little reasons. And that's why we have all these people all the time saying, well, Tone, what Byron should do is this. Well, Yvette, what you should do is this, because money run the world and green, and you just got to know how to navigate. What this law shows you is no, green don't rule nothing. Byron got money. See, that's not the problem. They don't want you there. They don't want nobody black in that space. They want to cut up all this money. We're going to keep all the money, and we're going to lock you out. It ain't about how to navigate a move. I should have said this, or I should have asked that, or I should have went left and I didn't go right. I should have zigzagged and I zigged and I zagged. I should have zagged and I zigged. No, it's not about that. It's about them having made a decision to lock you out, and that's what you fight for. So let's just stop all this, this Monday morning quarterbacking where people act like they were in the room and they just saw something that went left as an expert. No, this has been an intentional plan since the creation, since we were slaves, to keep us a bottom task. America, what is the gasoline America runs on? It runs on ADOS failure.
Come on.
So this is not something that can be fixed by an individual, or you just could have done it different. This is a choice that America has made, and we have not pushed hard enough and gotten white people to get honest enough, and people who have accessed whiteness, be they immigrants or whoever, to push America to make a different choice.
Look out. We got the Tasmanian devil of black politics on. When she come through, she's spinning and Yvette, you just set the room on fire. I got to, let me step out. Look, Yvette, what you said? Woo, you said a lot. I can't even add in. I'm looking for the plug. It got too many outlets. The thing that I want to tell everybody is Dash Radio, Voice of Reason, is where you can hear this on Dash Radio. We're back on YouTube. Yvette, that was powerful. I want to take a caller. We got Otis, and he been trying to get in. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from? You got to turn your background
I'm calling from Yorktown, Virginia.
This Otis, right? Oh, he dropped off. Oh, man. So, look. The Deadline article has something interesting. There was a quote, because I guess Comcast called back. They wanted to get in and say their part. They said, and I'm going to read this to you, Vet. Here we got Otis again. Let's see if he drops off. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Yorktown, Virginia. This is Otis. I got one question.
Wait, hold on, Otis. Hold on. I want you to hear this from Comcast, and then I'm going to get your opinion on this. Comcast got a line in this Deadline article, because you know they got to get their piece in. See, for all those that don't know, what happens in Hollywood or in entertainment is Variety, Hollywood Reporter, and Deadline, when they drop a story, everybody in the industry and in the know gets it. So they can let this just go out like this. This article titled Comcast Threatened with Boycott by LA Civil Rights Group over Supreme Court Battle with Byron Allen. Media giant asserts diversity record. They got to add that part in. On August 15th, the DOJ filed a brief, that's Department of Justice, Trump, that seeks to tighten the definitions of the Reconstruction era statute in Comcast's favor and to the very vocal Allen's detriment at the High Court. This case is not about Comcast. This is Comcast speaking. This is the NBC Universal's owner, which is Comcast, talking to Deadline. This case is not about Comcast's strong civil rights and diversity record. There has been no finding of discriminatory conduct by Comcast in this case by any court, and there has been none. In fact, the trial court dismissed plaintiffs' claim, talking about Byron Allen, claim of racial discrimination 3 times, finding them utterly without merit. But somehow he got to the Ninth Circuit, and we in the Supreme Court because you are appealing. But we gonna continue. Comcast has an outstanding record, meaning you, meaning Comcast, is the reason that this is in the Supreme Court. They lost at the Ninth Circuit. Comcast has an outstanding record of supporting and fostering diverse programming, but we don't own nothing. I'm gonna tell y'all that again. We don't know what Puffy owns with Revolt. We don't know what Magic owns with Aspire, but we know when we 100% own stuff, they don't want to let us distribute. We saw that with Byron, including programming from African-American owned channels, 2 more of which we launched earlier this year. I went through that before with y'all. They talking about those TV One, those Radio One or whatever I talked to you guys about, where they have a whole bunch of debt and a very little bit of assets, highly over leveraged. We talked about that. We on another level. His appeal is solely, talking about Byron, about a technical point of law that was decided in a novel, and we believe incorrect way by the Ninth Circuit. Ain't nothing novel about motivating factors. Otis, what you think?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. Tony, you already know that what they put out to the public ain't got nothing to do with the legal language that's used in that court. So they're playing the PR spin. I want to ask you one other thing, though. Did that man from L.A. actually say that Mark Morial never did his responsibility and notified those affiliates of this? Because I know you interviewed Byron Allen 3 years ago. So how in the world could this case make it all the way to the Ninth Circuit twice and they not find out up until the last minute? That gentleman sounded sincere when he said we didn't find out till the last minute. Your whole audience knew about this 3 years ago, and I've been putting that up on Twitter nonstop for the naysayers that talking about what Byron gonna get. It sounds like to me they got a serious case about getting rid of Mark Morial, because you got a fiduciary duty when you have a position like his to notify these affiliates so that they can take action. Much love to the work you're doing too, brother. Keep doing what you're doing. Gonna see you in October.
That's how Otis do you. Otis shine you up and run off. Otis shine you up, give you a black eye and run off. Okay, Otis. Thank you so much.
Hey, much love. I got my girl too.
Love to you.
I got my other ticket.
All right, Otis. Thank you. Look, Vet, what you think about the line from Comcast?
Well, I think Comcast is trying to, play this game, play the diversity game or whatever. But the diversity game is just what you said. It's a game. So once you throw everybody in this basket of diversity, where it's everybody except white men, then it just becomes a con, because it's never held. It's like like you said, and we talk about all the time. Wealth is held in families, not gender. So this is just a con, and who cares? I think we didn't rally enough around to fight enough, or after I understand that they were the power, Justice Powell was trying to change the Supreme, trying to save, so they say, affirmative action by making it about diversity or whatever. But one of the things that has to happen is that we have to, and I think we're doing it now, get very sincere about who we are and what we deserve and what we are owed as a specific group. And there is no specific diverse group that was harmed by slavery and the accrued disadvantage. That is a specific harm to a specific group of people, and that's ADOS.
Oh, man. It's a trip, because when that memorandum of understanding was signed in 2010, the one that Mark Morial, Al Sharpton, and the NAACP signed, that they pulled out for the merger, meaning Comcast, that they pulled out for net neutrality, that they kind of trying to lean on somewhat now. What you got to understand is a lot of things were supposed to happen in that. Go read it for yourself, the memorandum. But one of the things is things were supposed to be non-confidential. Meetings and things of the sort. They weren't non-confidential. We don't know what happened in these meetings. But what I will tell you is that Byron Allen took out a full-page ad, and what he wanted was 10-10-10. 10-10-10-10. No, hold on. So we ain't going to ask the question why you don't have a media mogul representing us in a media discussion. You have Sharpton. Let me ask you, would you let Sharpton negotiate your salary? I'm just going to ask any ADOS person out there. You can answer in the chat. If Sharpton had to negotiate your rent going higher or lower, did you think it would get fixed better or worse? Now, let me explain 10-10-10. He said, Comcast, you have 550 channels. Give us 50. Black folk. Not me, black folk. ADOS. Of the 50, give us a guaranteed 10 years of carriage. So we got 50 channels with 10 years of carriage, but guarantee us 10 million subscribers. And then give us 10 cents a subscriber monthly. Understand that creates the avenue to have photographers and accountants and producers in a black community. But they didn't want to hear that. So they brought in Sharpton and gave him a show. They gave him a show. I'm saying to you, even when you look at the 4 channels that they use, you can look for yourself. Aspire, Magic Johnson, Puffy with Revolt. We don't even know if Puffy's trying to get rid of that channel, because I know that most recently the Indian woman that runs it has said that it's undercapitalized. And then the other 2 channels, come on, man, we ain't gonna talk about it. We at a point where the call to action is are we gonna be ready to boycott Comcast? Are we also gonna be ready to make calls to Comcast to voice our frustration, to Brian Roberts, to David Cohen, to voice our frustration about this law that we all need, that roots our civil rights? It's that moment. We had a great discussion. Let me say this. I appreciate the LA Urban League and the president of the LA Urban League, Mr. Lawson, coming on the show. I appreciate his candor, but I mostly appreciate this letter, because this letter is civil rights action in movement. This letter is Dr. King's dream. Any last thing you want to say to the audience, Vet?
No, I just want to say I'm in full agreement with you, and I'm in full agreement with him. And I think we just have to keep marching in this direction. We have to do it in a very self-interested way.
Oh man, you can find Yvette Carnell and Break It Brown on Mondays and Wednesdays about like 9:30, 9:50 p.m. Eastern, and then you can find me here 7 p.m. Pacific every Friday. We're gonna have some changes where the new studio is opening, but as we get closer to the ADOS conference, which is October 4th and 5th in Louisville, Kentucky, we're gonna be out there. We're gonna have a few weeks where I either do the show somewhere else or I just don't do the show, but I'll keep you abreast on my Twitter. I'm out.